Welcome to As Yet Unsolved, the show where we take a look at unsolved cases from around the world that still haunt us. We look to dive into major and lesser-known cases as a way of educating and keeping the memory of those lost alive. It's our sincere hope that someday all of the cases featured here will be solved and bring closure to all of those involved. But before we begin, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell to be alerted when we release new content, as over 90% of you watching are not yet subscribed. New videos release every single week, and your support means the world to us as we strive to not filter our content, as we feel it does a disservice to those featured. January 27th, 1973. The Vietnam War was over. The Paris Peace Accords had been formally ratified. The accord stated that there would be no more American involvement in the country, but that is only part of the story. As troops began to head home and return to their families, the U.S. government was still involved with running clandestine missions within the country. A United States Air Force EC-47 carrying 8 crew members going by call sign Baron 52 was on one such mission. But they would be shot down over Laos only a week after the signing. But what came next would set off a mystery that some say still remains unsolved to this day. This is the unsolved mystery of the missing crew members of Baron 52. The Paris Peace Accords were signed, but before the ink had time to dry, the U.S. Air Force sent an EC-47 electronic warfare collection aircraft on a nighttime radio direction finding mission to monitor the Ho Chi Minh Trail in an attempt to locate North Vietnamese tanks moving south. The mission itself was in direct violation of the peace accords, and the crew knew it. In fact, one Sergeant Peter Cressman, electronics expert who flew a number of top-secret reconnaissance missions, who would also end up on Baron 52, wrote an angry letter to his congressman, stating that he and several members of his unit were in direct violation of the recently signed Paris Peace Accords by being forced to run missions despite American involvement in the war being over. Cressman also stated that he wanted to refuse orders, but feared the consequences if he did. But those concerns would be unheard, and Pressman and company, 8 members in total, would board Baron 52 for their mission. The flight itself was going according to plan, until about 2 hours into the early morning mission over Laos, when the plane began taking anti-aircraft fire. Radio contact was lost, and the plane was shot down in the jungle about 20 miles from South Vietnam. The location of the downed aircraft was roughly 8 miles away from 3 major roads in the area, all of which led back to North Vietnamese-held territory. It would take 2 days for the wreckage to be located by U.S. Air Force Search and Rescue. They determined that Baron 52 had crashed in an inverted position, and both wings had been sheared off during the crash. A special rescue team managed to get to the site and discovered 3 bodies in the cockpit still buckled into their seats. They had died upon impact. The team also discovered another body outside of the wreckage, but in the rear of the plane is where questions arose. You see, the jump door of the plane had been removed and was never located by the team then or since. The crew stationed in the rear were also not discovered, but it was clear that their safety buckles had been unbuckled. Not only that, but all of the top secret recon equipment they had on board was missing. Also missing were the rear crew's parachutes. And this is where the controversy would begin. A mother of one of the servicemen on Baron 52 recalls the day that she and her husband were notified of the crash. She states that 2 men from the military told them that their son's plane was shot down and that he was missing in action, possibly bailing out with several other crew members before the crash. However, 18 days later, the family would be updated and told that there was no chance of any survivors or the possibility of a bailout because of how the plane had crashed. The mother of one Sergeant Cressman would also be notified of the crash, and she initially accepted that her son was killed in action, but her position would change after receiving her son's belongings. You see, among his personal effects, Pressman's mother discovered the letter that he had written to his congressman about the illegality of the missions taking place. Cressman's parents also questioned the official ruling when they discovered that several parachutes were missing, suggesting that several men escaped the crash. In 1978, a few years after the crash and official record, Cressman's parents received a phone call from an attorney representing the National MIA organization. He claimed that he had seen evidence that suggested at least 4 members of Baron 52 had survived the crash and had been captured by North Vietnamese forces. Jack Anderson, an investigative journalist, uncovered a number of reports, including intelligence briefings from around the day of the incident. On the morning of February 5th, a U.S. intelligence listening post in the area intercepted enemy communications indicating that they were transporting 4 captured airmen. This was not an isolated incident, as for the next several months, listening posts captured communications about said captured airmen. Another listening post made a report about an intercepted communication that spoke about 4 air pirates captured the day Baron 52 was shot down. Official records indicate that Baron 52 was the only aircraft downed on the day of that communication. Later, an operative secretly working for the U.S. reported that they witnessed a transport of 4 prisoners along one of the roads leading to the crash site. All of these reports were kept classified by the government until Jack Anderson broke the story on Good Morning America. We learned that in 1973, a man by the name of Terrell Minarson, who was working for the NSA, held a position that involved him deciphering captured North Vietnamese messages. During his time, he discovered communications between North Vietnamese who were requesting transport for captured American pilots. As this was after the peace accords, Minarson believed that the men they were discussing were the survivors of Baron 52. He holds to the belief that the men were captured after parachuting out before their plane crashed. The family of another missing member of Baron 52 went to the Pentagon seeking answers, and after looking at their son's files, found copies of various radio intercepts. And while much of the information in those intercepts were blacked out, they felt that they found enough information to suggest that the U.S. government knew that members of Baron 52 were captured by the enemy. Later, the Defense Intelligence Agency admitted that the communications existed, but noted that the nationality of the captured pilots was never specified, and that they did not believe they were talking about the crew of Baron 52 in those captured communications. Later, in 1986, another intel analyst would come forward. Retired intelligence analyst Jerry Mooney testified before Congress and stated that 4 members of Baron 52 were, in fact, prisoners of war, but noted that they were transferred to the Soviet Union. Family members of the missing airmen believe that the government covered up the incident and captured airmen because it happened after the Paris Peace Accords, and its revelation could have doomed the agreement. Dr. Roger Shields, the Assistant Secretary of Defense at the Paris peace talks, crossed off the names of the missing airmen from Baron 52 as POWs captured, but later stated that he believes the evidence showed that the men were, in fact, captured and may still be alive. In 1992, a task force was sent to the location of the crash to excavate and recover anything that they could. The team recovered the partial remains of 7 men, but none of those remains could be positively identified as even being human. L.S.R. Kellery was the person involved in the identification of the remains. He was a pioneer in the field of forensic anthropology, but was later replaced by an Army official with little forensic experience, who would state that the remains were in fact those of the 7 missing men. The military felt that the results confirmed their original findings, and the families of many of the men on board Baron 52 agreed. Still, some families refused to carry out DNA testing on the remains for unknown reasons. In 1996, the remains that were recovered of Baron 52 were laid to rest at Arlington National Cemetery. But the mystery for some still remains, as the same month the remains were laid to rest, Cressman's brother stated that his brother was positively identified thanks to CILHI dental x-rays of the remains. The Air Force provided those x-rays to the family, but questions arose almost immediately, as the family stated that Cressman had several teeth knocked out prior to entry into the service, and that the x-rays they were provided of his records showed a full set of upper and lower teeth. Congress reviewed the crash and the status of the 4 crewmen again in 2016, but declined to list them as missing in action. To this day, the families of Sergeant Peter Cressman and Joseph Mateov are still searching for answers to the actual whereabouts of their sons. Thank you for checking out this episode of As Yet Unsolved. If you like what you heard here, the best thing you can do is like, comment, and subscribe. And be sure to let us know in the comments below what you thought of this video and any future potential case that you'd like us to take a look at. Until then, stay safe, and we'll see you again real soon.